Hey guys, we're gonna have these videos up here so you guys can review for, or maybe get ahead for Chapter 5. And Chapter 5, Section 1 talks about properties of zero and negative exponents. And I'm gonna give you guys some examples so you guys can go over them so you guys can have a heads up of what's gonna go on in class, or if you just want to review, okay? All right, so here we have the zero exponent. So if a is not a zero, then 0 to the a to the 0 is equal to 1. So this is basically saying that any number that you replace in for a, you raise it to the 0, that's going to be equal to 1. The only condition is that a cannot be 0. Okay, so let's go over some examples. So these are just different ways. We're pretty much already going to know the answers to some of these because they're all raised to the 0. But here, 3 to the 0, it follows this condition. 3 is not 0, so this is equal to 1. Pi to the 0. Now remember, pi is about 3.14. So 3.14 raised to the 0 is still 1. Okay? Even 2.78. Even a decimal, just like the one above. 2.78 raised to the 0 is still 1. Okay? Even a negative number. If you raise a negative number to the 0, where the negative is inside the parentheses, that's also equal to 1. Okay? Now let's take a look at some variables. So this is kind of going with the formula saying, except the a is now y. Okay, so now this is still equal to 1. All right, so these are pretty basic. So you can have a whole number, you can have a symbol that represents a number equal to, greater than raised to the 0. You can have a decimal raised to the 0 and equal to 1. You can have a negative number raised to the 0 as long as it's in the parentheses equal to 1. And you can have a variable raised to the 0 and it's equal to 1. Okay. Now here they're a little bit different. Now look, here we're raising all of this to 0. So since all of this is raised to the 0, that's equal to 1. But look, the 5 isn't raised to the 0, so we have to rewrite that. So it's really 5 times 1, which is equal to 5. Okay? All right, now let's take a look at this one. So since the 3 is not being raised to 0, I'm going to rewrite that over here, but let's take a look what's inside the parentheses. So y to the 0 is 1, plus what's x to the 0? That's 1 as well. So here we're going to get 3 times 2, which is equal to 6. Okay? Because 1 plus 1 is 2, and then we get 3 times 2 is 6. All right? Here's the next one. So the 1,000's not being raised to the 0, right? So I'm going to rewrite that 1,000. But look, x plus y raised to the 0. So it doesn't matter if whatever number we get in here, that number is still going to be raised to the 0. So any number that we raise to the 0 is equal to 1. So times 1, and that's equal to 1,000. Okay. Now this is the only example where you raise it to 0 and that does not have an answer. So I'm going to put here DNE for does not exist. Okay. So that's the examples for anything raised to the 0. Okay. All right. Here's another one. Negative exponent. If a is not a 0 and n is an integer, then a to the negative n is equal to 1 over a to the n. Okay, so this is basically taking the reciprocal. Okay, so if you raise something to the negative, you get it's like getting the reciprocal of a to the n. Okay, so here, just make sure that your a is not 0. And then n, they're giving an example, they're limited to integers. So if you want an example of an integer, here are the set of integers. So we have dot, 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 negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, dot, dot, dot. Okay? So we're only going to be dealing with these numbers right here. So it's all the numbers except the ones that are in between these numbers. So not 1.5 or 2.3 or anything like that. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at some examples. So if we follow this formula here, where it's 1 over a to the n, which is equal to a to the negative n, then this is going to be equal to 1 over 7 squared. Okay, now we can square 7, we get a 49. Okay? What about this one here? So once again, everything here is raised to the negative 3. So if I want to change that negative 3 to a positive, I'm going to raise this now to the positive 3, but where it's underneath 1. Okay? Now here it's asking us what's negative 5 to the third power. It's like saying what's negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. Well, that's equal to negative 125. Okay? All right, what about this one here? The 5 is not being raised to the negative 1, it's just the 2. So I'm going to rewrite the 5 and the 2 raised to the negative 1 is 1 over 2 to the first power, but I don't have to write that down, the first power. So when we multiply this out, this is really underneath 1, we multiply straight across, and we get 5 over 2. Okay? All right, what about this one here? We have 2,000 not being raised to the negative 1, but the 4 is being raised to the negative 1, which makes it 1 over 4. So it's basically just like this example above, multiply straight across, and then we can reduce. Okay, so this ends up being a 500. Okay, because 2,000 divided by 4 is 500. All right, what about this one here? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't have any negative exponents when they ask you to simplify. So here we have a negative 2 up here. So in order for us to get rid of it, we can bring it down and turn it into a positive. So we're going to leave the 2 up and leave the 3b cubed up there, since it doesn't have any negative exponents. And then we're going to drop this one down and turn the 2 to a positive since we brought it down. Okay? All right, let's take a look at this one. So here we have 1 over b to the negative 4. To make it a positive, I can bring it up here with a 1. So it's like saying 1 times b to the negative 4. Sorry, positive, so it turns, let me rewrite that, I'm sorry. So it's going to be 1 times b to the 4, because since we move it up, it becomes a positive 4. Now, we don't have to write that down. I just wanted you to see that. So it's really just equal b to the 4th. You just bring it up, and it becomes b to the 4th. Okay? What about this one here? The only problem here is that this is raised to negative 1. So I'm going to bring it down to with a y. So I'm going to bring it down with the y. It makes it a positive. Once again, I don't have to write that 1 anymore because now it's positive. But what stays up here? So what we don't see is what we don't write down is the 1. So we're going to keep that 1 up there. Okay? All right. So this last one, or this second to last one here, they're both negative. So I'm going to switch them. I'm going to flip-flop them. So I'm going to do y, x over y. So they're both raised to the first power. I just switched them to make them both positive. Okay? All right, last one here. So here we can have the numbers 6 and 3 that can actually be reduced. 6 divided by 3 is actually a 2. So the 2 stays up top. So since we divided 6 by 3 and it's a 2, it's going to stay up top. Now here's the problem, is that this is negative. So I want to bring that one down so I can make it a positive. Okay? And this one's negative, so I want to make it a positive, so I'm going to bring it up top. So it's going to be x squared. The b cubed is fine, and so is the y to the 4th. Okay?